Hey, welcome back to Recently Played, and today I'm going to give you my honest thoughts, feelings, and opinions on Savage by aespa. Let's get into it. So, aespa is the fresh and exciting new girl group from SM Entertainment, and Savage is their debut mini-album, and I gotta say there's a lot of hype going into this one, so I was pretty excited to check it out. And up until this point, I guess I thought they were alright. I didn't really have much to go off of, except for those strange cartoon avatars that look like Bratz dolls. And yeah, I was kind of given the impression that aespa was gonna be SM's response to groups like ITZY or Blackpink. And I'm gonna come back to this point, but I feel like in a lot of ways, aespa really succeeds, especially on this album, where groups like ITZY or Blackpink would fall short. So before we get into Savage, I want to talk a little bit about their single Next Level, which was released earlier this year, and I've got to say I didn't really like it when it came out, and I still don't really love the song, but you know, given some time and seeing the kind of notoriety that the song has gained over the years, seeing some cool remixes and some cool covers of the song, I gotta say, it certainly has grown on me. I think they took a really big risk on the song and it really paid off. I just think it's kind of hilarious and awesome that this is a song originally on the Fast and Furious Hobbs and Shaw soundtrack that was kind of reworked by keeping some sections almost identical and then adding in new sections that sound almost nothing like the original song. I think Next Level is just a great time overall, and I would not have been as excited for Savage if it had not been released. And to my surprise, I saw that Next Level is not included on the track list for Savage, which I found to be a pretty bold move from SM Entertainment. To not put this huge smash hit single on the album really screams confidence to me. They're telling me, you know what, we don't need it. We got something really cool in store for you on this album that is gonna match, you know, the awesomeness of Next Level. Now, in the promotional material for Savage, they really drilled in that hyper pop aesthetic, and you know, I was really interested in seeing how that look would carry over into the sound of this album. And to my knowledge, I haven't really heard a mainstream K-pop group really do hyper pop or really go that far into exploring the darker elements of electronic music within that mainstream context. You know, I think even if you remotely follow what's going on in the Western pop music world, you would know that hyperpop has kind of become this big phenomenon. You know, one solid release after another, we're kind of seeing this big collective embrace of that really shocking, kind of obnoxious, kind of ironic and corny hyperpop sound. So it's no surprise that we're probably going to be seeing more of this in the K-pop world as well. And you know, as a Red Velvet fan, I can definitely vouch that SM Entertainment is no stranger to pushing the button or pushing the boundaries of the K-pop genre. And I think, you know, with a rookie group aimed at a younger demographic, they certainly have a good shot at really pushing the boundary and making a very shocking release with this new group. And going into it, that's probably what I most wanted to hear from this album. My biggest fear is that they would just use that eye-catching hyperpop aesthetic and then deliver another bland and generic album that sounds almost identical to any of the big girl crush groups of this day. So what is my first impression of Savage by aespa? I think this album is awesome. I had a lot of fun on my first playthrough. There was a lot of really memorable moments, and just as I hoped, it was very edgy and crazy for a K-pop album. The title track Savage really had a lot to live up to. It had to really equal the shock value of Next Level. It had to also be a really wild ride, and I think it's really great in that it's one of those songs that you put on and people are like, what is that? So I think genres like hyperpop or dubstep or brostep, if you will, are kind of obnoxious by design, but I think there's a fine line between being shocking and being obnoxious, and I think this one more so lands in the shocking category. But yeah, I like the trappy feel of the song. I think it's got a really great energy. I love the attitude and the verses. I think the rapping is a lot of fun. I gotta say, I'm not really a fan of the chorus in Savage. It just feels a little Blackpink-esque. It does feel a little predictable in a song that is otherwise quite a wild ride, as I said before. But I did really love the trippy, psychedelic, almost kind of vaporwave section at the end. I thought it was a lot of fun and really added to making this a memorable track for me. I'll Make You Cry, like again, such an awesome track, so much fun. Just everything that I like about Savage really carries over nicely into this track. I love that first chorus where the drums kind of drop out and it's just that big epic with all the crazy synths going on in the background. It kind of gives me this like Yeezus feel almost. It's just this really like doomy, industrial in your face. Yeah, I think it's great. Super hard hitting. I love when that backbeat and the drums just kicks back in the chorus. Just so much fun. I think it's a great time. The sound and vibe is really consistent from the previous track, and I just think it's so well executed. It really kind of caught me off guard in a really great way. Yeppi Yeppi, great track as well for quite different reasons. I thought this was the one part of the album that kind of feels bright and cheery and happy, and when that chorus comes in, it just feels like such a great breath of fresh air. And I think it's cool how short-lived those choruses are as well. You really want them to go longer, but they just don't, and it's so nice. And I love the spastic energy of the track, how it's just like trap one section and then it's like these drum and bass break beats the next section, and it's just really going all over the place. It's just like this really crazy like sugar high. It sounds like something that like a 5-year-old would make, but like not in a bad way at all. It just has that really youthful energy, and it's quite nice. And then we get into Iconic, which, I don't think it's a bad track. I think it's quite solid. It's well produced. It's decently catchy, but not infectious. It's just kind of a meh track for me. It doesn't really go anywhere further that the other songs don't touch on, and that's kind of what I wanted the album to do, is just keep getting a little bit crazier and crazier. But I don't think there are any bad tracks, but I think this is probably the weakest one in my opinion. And then we got the last song, Lucid Dream. I think it's nice to have a more groovy track on there, but I think it also rides a little bit too close to sounding like something that would be on a Red Velvet album. My biggest problem with it is that it lacks that instantly identifiable aespa sound. They're really trying to show us that they are this really edgy and cool hyperpop influenced K-pop group, and I think for the last track I really wanted something really big and boundary pushing, kind of getting out of control sounding. I'm listening to aespa to hear something that I've never really heard before quite in this context, and I didn't really get that from this track. Maybe it's just my personal preference, but I think it would have been really cool to have the album end on this just kind of crazy, chaotic, glitchy meltdown of noise. I thought that would have been pretty awesome. Oh well. Kind of along those lines, last week I was listening to that album, I believe 2017 to 2019 by Against All Logic, aka Nicholas Jar, and there's this one track, Deefers, on them that gets to this crazy breakdown of noise that just makes you so uncomfortable, and it's just feeling so chaotic. And I think that something along those lines really would have panned off well for aespa. Maybe SM should hire Nicholas Jar to produce on the next one. I'd be happy to hook you guys up. I think it would be a great collab. I don't know how much Nicholas Jar charges, but I think it'd be a worthwhile investment. But overall, very solid release. Very strong release right out of the gate. To be honest, this album is a lot more solid than I thought it would be. Again, this is just my preference, but I think that they could have taken that experimental electronic sound just a little bit further, really push the button a little bit more, but you know, on the next release, I think they got some room to play around with it more.
Or they'll just make a really generic and lame sounding album next time, and I'm gonna make another video complaining about it. Who knows? We'll see.
Now, being a little nitpicky here, I do have a little bit of trouble telling the members of aespa apart from their vocals alone. I think they all kind of sound a little bit too similar to one another, and you know, personally, I really enjoy groups where I can hear the distinct vocals from one another. And you know, I've tried watching the color-coded lyric videos and whatever, and I still didn't really get a lot of sense of distinct personality from each member. I think a lot of their verses could very well be interchangeable with a different member, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because they're great vocalists, and I think the performances are a lot of fun. They're really strong. They really work for what they're trying to do, but you know, I think just a little bit more distinctiveness in their personalities certainly wouldn't hurt. You know, I think this is a very strong album from aespa right off the bat. I think groups like Blackpink or ITZY showed a lot of potential, but have not quite put together a release that is as strong and cohesive overall as Savage, and I think that's quite an accomplishment from them. And you know, I think this is a good album. I give it a 7.8 out of 10. What did you think of Savage by aespa? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you agree with some things I said? Let me know down below in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, it always helps to give me a thumbs up and a subscribe. Alright, I'll see you next time. You take it easy.